Hello, everybody. It is Thursday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joined for our weekly chat by Jason Mackey, our Post-Gazette sports columnist. Jason, we're getting into the dog days of summer for us as reporters. I know August is conventionally the dog days of the summer, but for us, this period between the end of mini camp and training camp is the roughest time for coming up with topics. So today we're going to do some Steelers over-unders. Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, Kaleb Johnson, Jaylen Warren, TJ Watt. What numbers will they put up in 2025? We're going to go through some of the Vegas predictions. Can the Steelers go over or under that? We're going to talk a little bit about the Penguins with the Stanley Cup being awarded this week. How far is the gap between them and the Florida Panthers? Also got some sale rumors percolating through, so we're going to talk about some of that. Then in the third segment, airing on our Post-Gazette Pirates YouTube channel, we're going to talk about apathy. Is it starting to set in with the Pirates? What is going on with them after their decent run of ball since Donnie Kelly was promoted to manager and Derek Shelton was fired? So a lot to get into this week. Jason, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. Doing great. Was out at the U.S. Open last week. I am very high on the golf at the moment. I kind of had the bug before, but that accelerated it. What a great time out there. But yeah, I'm doing well, man. Doing well. Looking forward to navigating the dog days with you.
Yeah, exactly. We're got a lot to talk about. Before we do, just want to thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's Edgar Snyder and Associates. Law firms come and go, but what law firm has been here in Western PA fighting for injury victims for more than 40 years? It's Edgar Snyder and Associates. What firm has a staff of over 130 people who live and work here? It's Edgar Snyder and Associates. Law firms come and go, but Edgar Snyder and Associates is a name you can always trust. So remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. If you've been hurt in an accident, call them at 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit edgarsnyder.com. They're available 24/7. Jason, let's dig into these over-unders. First one I've got written down here in my notes is Aaron Rodgers over or under 3,200 passing yards. I believe that's the number over at FanDuel. The Steelers as a team went over that total by a few hundred yards last year. So, I mean, they cleared it pretty easily. So to me, this seems more like a question of, is Aaron Rodgers going to stay healthy for 17 games? More so than if he's healthy, can he get over that number? Is that how you're reading that?
Yeah, I mean, 3,000 yards in the NFL isn't what it used to be. 4,000 is a better benchmark now with how much teams throw. I mean, I look at the Steelers' offense last year, and it wasn't very good. I thought it was fairly basic, at least through the air. It wasn't what it should be. I can't predict Aaron Rodgers' health. I can predict how I think the Steelers want to use him and can use him. And I don't think he's going to be in a situation that opens himself up to injury a whole lot. I think they want to get the ball out quickly. Again, we have not seen Aaron Rodgers run full team drills, but based on what you hear being down there, a lot of how they've talked about things so far, they feel that Aaron Rodgers can get them into the right play, that he's not taking a deep drop and subjecting himself to that sort of physicality. So I guess that's a long way of saying, Adam, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I think Aaron Rodgers can throw for more than 3,200 yards. I think he can stay healthy. I don't think that makes the Steelers an elite team, but I think even if you're throwing for 38, 3,900 yards, that doesn't automatically portend success.
I think it's going to be well over that if he plays 17 games.
You think he can throw for 4,000?
I think he can throw. I was going to say, if he's healthy for all 17, I think the number for me is around 42, 43, because I think they're going to throw the ball a lot more often than they did last season, especially when consider Justin Fields played, 6 games, so about a third of the schedule. If I go back through his totals here, he had 156 against Atlanta in the opener, 117 against Denver. Then the second game, 131 against Dallas, 145 against Vegas. I think Aaron Rodgers in those games is throwing for 200 minimum. So you start stacking those yards, you're pretty quickly, already threatening that 4,000 yard mark.
Well, they're better at receiver too, Adam. I mean, DK Metcalf is an upgrade over Pickens. I don't think they're done shopping. I think Calvin Austin as your 3 is very good. I mean, those guys aren't going to just lack numbers. It's going to come somewhere. Doesn't mean they're a good team.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Are we talking about what it means for the team? I don't think it necessarily means a ton, but I do think just as a raw total, if things go reasonably as they're supposed to, which he should sail over 4,000, let alone 3,200. I'll throw another prop at you, Jason. I think is a little more interesting. It's 22.5 touchdowns for Aaron Rodgers. Steelers as a team went under that total last season. I think it was 16 for Russell Wilson and 5 for Justin Fields. But Rodgers has never gone under that total in a healthy season as a starter. Do you think he gets over 22.5 in the touchdown department?
I do. And I think I'm drinking some Kool-Aid here on Rodgers. But you know what? Being down there, seeing him move around, seeing him throw live, seeing his mobility, not that I think Aaron Rodgers is going to become a scrambling quarterback. Of course not. But does he look like some broken down has-been guy that's lumbering around? No. And I mean, he didn't suddenly become stupid. You've got some fairly good playmakers around him. Those are the inputs for me making this decision or answering that. I think he goes over. I don't think he goes to 40, but I mean, do I think he can throw 28 touchdowns here? Yes, I do. Again, I still see the Steelers winding up as, an 11-6 type of team, but I don't think this is going to go horribly with Rodgers specifically.
I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be close, Jason, because I just don't think the personnel they have lends itself to a lot of breakaway type of scores, either long touchdown passes or just breaking loose from defenders. I think you're going to have to be perfect as you get in deep. I think that's been the problem with the Steelers offense for a while now. A lot of people faulted Kenny Pickett for his touchdown total, and some of that was justified, and I think some of that was that there just wasn't enough explosive playmaking. Do I like DK Metcalf? Yes. Do I think he's giving you an altogether different package than George Pickens did in that way? No, I don't think he's going to be busting out some of these Antonio Brown type, wide open touchdown plays that we became used to in those killer bees there. And I think that's part of the problem with the Steelers offense. So I think it's going to be over, but I think it's going to be close.
Part of my thinking, Adam, and I was trying to do quickie math in my head. Think about the pass catchers they have. Let's say it that way. Do you think DK Metcalf can catch 8 touchdown passes this year? My answer would be yes.
Right? I think he can. Yeah.
You think that's reasonable? And let's just operate on assumptions. They're going to get a wide receiver too. Fairly logical. Let's give him 4 touchdowns. Let's give Calvin Austin 4 touchdowns. Let's give Pat Freiermuth 6. Let's give the running backs 4. That's over 22, I believe. Check my math there.
No, that puts you well over. I guess I would.
I don't think those are absurd asks either. So I mean yeah.
I would be surprised if everyone hit those benchmarks. Specifically, I think Freiermuth would surprise me if he is that much of an end zone, red zone target. I think that's what everyone would like to see him be, but I don't know if with some of the other names, if they do add a wide receiver too, are there going to be enough targets down in deep for him to hit that total? Be interesting to see. Jason, I got one more here on Rodgers. It's not really about him. It's more about the offensive line. Over under 45 sacks of Steelers quarterbacks. So that could be Rodgers. It could be someone else. The offensive line gave up 49 last year between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. We know Russ had a bit of an issue with holding onto the ball a little too long, getting out of the way of opposing rushes. I don't know if you quite have the same problem with Aaron Rodgers. I think it's more a mobility thing at this stage of his career. He took 40 sacks with the Jets, so I figured setting it kind of in the middle is a nice over-under for this offensive lineup. Can it show improvement from how it protected the guys last year versus, I think, a baseline immobility with Aaron Rodgers that they're just going to have to deal with regardless?
Yeah, I'll get to that in 1 second. I just want to make sure I added up the numbers that I was citing, and it got to 26. So I was really nervous that was going to add up and be less than what we were talking about. But I'm going to take the under on that, Adam. And I'm going to take the under because I do think the offensive line can be better with Broderick Jones on his natural left side. I really thought that was a square peg, round hole kind of situation. Getting Troy Fautanu back is going to be big for them. I don't think the offensive line is going to be an Achilles heel like it was down the stretch last year. And I'm not saying that everything is going to be perfect with the Steelers quarterback situation. But I do know this, the difference between Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, a lot like what you were talking about. Russ would hang on to the ball, try to throw moon balls down the field, didn't always work out. Rodgers is just a different quarterback. He's going to get rid of the ball. He's going to not take sacks, and he's going to avoid getting hit, and he's going to chuck it out of bounds. That might render the offense ineffective sometimes, but it's going to reduce the sack total. So I'm going to take under, not by a ton, but I don't see Aaron Rodgers hanging onto the ball long enough that it becomes a huge problem. What about you?
I'm going to go push. I think it's going to be right around that 45 number. I think it's going to be more than if he took 40 with the Jets. I think he can certainly. I can certainly imagine him taking more than that with this young offensive line. I do think they'll show some improvements for some of the reasons you outlined. So that's kind of why I think, if the number is 44.5, I'll say that he'll take 45. I would go over in that case. At 45, I think that's right about where I expect them to be, of showing a little bit of improvement, but still having this guy who just cannot move and is going to take sacks sometimes just for that simple reason. I don't know if I think the offensive line is going to be an Achilles heel, but I also don't think it's going to be a strength quite yet. I think these guys have to take the step to basic competence before we get to becoming a strength. So that's how I'm looking at the year ahead. Jason, let's get into the running backs. There is no prop posted at FanDuel on this one because we don't really know how that backfield is going to unfold. It looks like very much like a committee situation at the moment. So I'm going to ask the question this way. Do you see either Kaleb Johnson or Jaylen Warren getting over the 1,000-yard mark this season? I think I asked you a similar version of this question at some point on one of these podcasts in the past, and I think we both agreed Kaleb Johnson has 1,000-yard back potential at the NFL level, but is that going to be in 2025?
I don't think so. I have a hard time seeing anybody get to 1,000. The Steelers running back room, Kenneth Gainwell, I don't think anybody's predicting that, but I think he's going to get some carries. I think because of the timeshare situation, it is. I don't see anybody getting to 1,000, but Adam, to sort of build on what we were talking about with Kaleb Johnson, I'm coming out of OTAs and minicamp feeling very encouraged about where he's at and the role he's going to play in this offense. And Jaylen Warren's going to be the starter. I don't have any doubts about that, but they don't need to put training wheels on Kaleb Johnson. He might not be your pass pro guy right away, but Jaylen Warren's one of the best in the NFL at that. I think Kaleb Johnson's really going to impress. If I can get 6 to 8 really good carries out of him, maybe 12 to 15 from Warren, 3 to 4 solid touches out of Gainwell, I like that. I mean, that doesn't add up to anybody having 1,000 yards at the end of the season, but it adds up to the Steelers having an effective running game. They've run more zone stuff. I'm sure Kris, Ray, and Brian have talked about that on their various podcasts. But I do feel encouraged by the running game. I think that it didn't reach anywhere near, I think, what people expected of it, what I expected of it last year. There was that brief blip with Najee Harris, and we're talking about the return of Najee, and the Steelers were wrong for not picking up his option. And there's a lot of meat on that bone, and I'm curious how much Kaleb Johnson can chew off.
Yeah, I think if the Steelers felt confident in Jaylen Warren as that 12 to 15 carry, or maybe more, as a bell cow type of guy, I don't know if you go for Kaleb Johnson where they did. I think they really like him a lot, and I think he is going to find a groove somewhere around midseason. And the question is, how much of the deficit from earlier in the season can you run up to get toward that 1,000 yards? I'm going to say under, but I think it's going to be closer than maybe we think. I think the big concern for me would be, are there going to be enough carries available in this offense if it becomes a little more pass heavy than it's been in recent years, because you have Aaron Rodgers and because you signed DK Metcalf. I think Arthur Smith was basically saying to that effect of, we didn't go out and get these guys to just keep pounding the ball quite as heavily as we did. So you're going to have
the wishbone. To run the wishbone. I love it.
So you're going to have fewer opportunities. So the question is, how do those get taken up? I can see. Let me say this. I think Kaleb Johnson can get to like 750, 800 if he starts, sliding into more of the starter role, kind of where Najee Harris was. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility.
No, and if you would if the bet was Kaleb Johnson 1,000 yards next year or the year after. I'd take that bet. I would. I think he's 1,000-yard back in the NFL. I just don't think right now. I mean, you're paying Jaylen Warren a pretty good amount of money, right? Like, you're going to give him the ball and you're going to get your money's worth, and he deserves first crack at it. I have some doubts whether you feed Jaylen Warren the ball 20 times a game over 17 games if he's going to stay healthy. I haven't seen it. I hope he does. Love the kid. I don't think they're going to go that route. And so I think it's going to open opportunities for both of them, as it should. But it's not Kaleb Johnson's backfield yet.
Jason, let's get to the receivers. DK Metcalf over under 925 yards. The Steelers' leading receiver has gone under this total in 4 of the last 6 years. But DK has not gone under that total since his rookie season in Seattle, which I believe was 2019. So some interesting variables there. Obviously, we've been talking more. We think they're going to pass more. We also think they might get a number 2, and the Steelers feel good about some of the other options they have behind DK Metcalf. Does that translate to a more diverse passing attack where maybe DK is effective but still doesn't hit that 925 mark?
Yeah, I'm going to take the over. Short answer. The Steelers are paying Metcalf a lot of money. I think if there's something still in the tank for Aaron Rodgers, the targets have to go somewhere. I do think they'll sign a number 2, but the number 2 isn't going to be a Keenan Allen level kind of guy. You know, I don't think it's going to be somebody who siphons targets away from DK Metcalf. I can see it. I'm gonna take the over but not by much, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, I could see, I don't know, 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns, something like that. I don't think he's going to be putting up CD Lamb numbers or anything like that, but he's going to be Aaron Rodgers' primary target. They're going to throw the ball more. If we're saying that Aaron Rodgers is going to throw for, 3,800 or whatever, I think your number was actually 4,300, something like that. Wow. Like, it has to go somewhere. It has to go somewhere, and it's not going to Ben Skoranek. So I don't see how he's not over 925.
Yeah, I think if the number was 1,000, it would be interesting. I think I'd go a little under 1,000. But I think I'll go over the 925. 925 was just the benchmark that FanDuel had set for him, and I found that interesting because they've gone under that total so often. So usually 1,000 is the benchmark for number 1 receiver, and so it's interesting that it was set so low. But yeah, I think it's going to go somewhere between those two. Jason, let's get out of here on the defensive end. Over or under 14.5 sacks for TJ Watt. He had gone over that total in each of his last 4 healthy seasons before last year. We know the problem was he was easier to block last year because of the lack of depth on the defensive line. Clearly, they've addressed that with Derek Harmon. YA Black is also going to be there eating up some blocks, even if he doesn't put up super impressive totals. So do you think TJ Watt is going to be over that 14.5 number again and toward the leaders in the NFL?
I don't think it's going to be much different than last year for TJ. I think teams are going to continue to roll a bunch of pressure at him. I'm not saying he can't be effective, and I'm going to take the under, but not by much. I think injuries could play a part. Wouldn't be surprised if TJ misses some time. And I think there's going to be a whole bunch of, scuttlebutt and talk throughout camp about him signing a $40 million a year contract. And I think at some point in the fall, we're going to look and say, where are those $40 million going? Because they're not being represented in sack production. So I don't mean that to say TJ Watt's going to have a hugely disappointing season. It's just if the over-under is 14.5, my bet's going to be under. I think it's a little bit safer at this point. What say you?
Yeah, I was going to say under as well. I think it would only take him missing a game or 2. I don't think it has to be, missing half the season like he did a couple of years ago. I think the factors of just what you mentioned, how defenses or how opposing offenses deal with him, plus a health issue here and there, I think that could keep him around 12, 13, 14, something like that. So he would miss out on going on the over with 15. And, 15 is a big number, Jason. I think that he has desensitized a lot of people to just how significant it is to hit 15 sacks. So yeah. That's part of why I say he's going under, because it's hard to get 15 sacks in the NFL.
It is hard. It could be recency bias on our part too. Like the Steelers pass rush was not good last season. And I suppose that if like Y.A. Black or Derek Harmon and even Alex Highsmith, I didn't think had his best year last year. You know, if the totality of their pass rush is better, maybe if they're even bringing defensive backs on blitzes more frequently, maybe that helps TJ Watt. But I guess what we're saying, just like a lot of factors have to go right for him to hit the over on 14.5.
Jason, we are going to get into the Penguins on the other side of this break. Some interesting topics to dig through between the Stanley Cup, Evgeni Malkin's future, Mario and Ron Burkle reportedly wanting to buy the team back from Fenway Sports Group. Before we get into that, we want to thank another sponsor. First, it's UFC Gym. Are you looking for a way to challenge your body and sharpen your mind? Step into something more than just a workout. Welcome to the brand new Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy at UFC Gym. Here, it's not just about training. It's about living the values of honor, discipline, and respect. Whether you're a total beginner or leveling up your skills, you'll be guided through a structured program led by a third-degree black belt that builds confidence, strength, flexibility, and real technique. Head down to UFC Gym at the Waterfront or Market Square to learn about their exclusive 3-month introductory package today. We'd also like to pass along a message from our friends in Bradenton, Florida.
Embrace the laid-back charm of island life while sinking your toes in the sand and discovering real, authentic Florida in the Bradenton area. Unspoiled beauty and pristine beaches, a vibrant waterfront downtown energized by local arts and culture, fresh Floridian cuisine with a flourish of rich history, and friendly locals ready to welcome you to this preserved paradise on Florida's Gulf Coast. Plan your visit today at BradentonGulfIslands.com.
We are back on the Jason Mackey podcast here on the Post-Gazette Sports YouTube channel. Jason, Florida Panthers win the Stanley Cup for a second year in a row, become the second team since the Penguins did it in 16 and 17 to repeat. Obviously, Tampa Bay was the other one. When you watch this team, Jason, how far away from that are the Penguins right now? I know we talk a lot about, can the Penguins improve enough to make the season interesting? Can they slip into that 6, 7, 8 seed in the Eastern Conference so that we might get another run here, with the core of Sidney, Crosby, Evgeni Malkin, Kris Letang before they start hanging it up and leaving Pittsburgh. I think we think that they have a chance to get there, but it seems like they're a long way off from being as dominant as a team like Florida is.
Yeah, it feels miles and miles and miles and miles away, Adam. It really does. I'm probably like a lot of people out there. You can't help but think about the last time the Penguins did this, and it feels so far removed. Different ownership, different GM, different coach, largely different players outside of 4 of them. It really feels like I look at the Panthers play and the depth that they have and the way that team has been constructed, and I don't see anything close on the Penguins. I see a team with the Penguins that plays an incredibly a much higher risk game than they need to play. I see Paul Maurice and creating a clear identity for the Florida Panthers. I see goaltending that's not in the same stratosphere as what the Penguins have. Back when the Penguins were the Penguins, you had 3 lines, even a 4th line that could be a factor most nights, and that's what the Panthers have. It's such a deep team, and a deep team that plays a responsible way too. Like I've loved Sasha Barkov's game for a long, long time. You bring Marchand in, just so many good players, and it just doesn't feel like the Penguins have a lot of that. Like they've got a good top line. I'm good if the Penguins roll into next season with Rickard Rakell, Sidney Crosby, and Brian Rust. But beyond that, there's a lot of hopes and prayers. I hope that Rutger McGroarty and Ville Koivunen become the best versions of themselves. I know we're going to talk about Evgeni Malkin in a second. I mean, maybe he rediscovers something in what will be his final year in the NHL. But beyond that, what sort of depth do they have? They don't, and they've got a bunch of problems on defense. They have a bunch of unanswered questions in goal. I just look at a lot of facets of the Panthers, and I don't see them reflected in what the Penguins have.
You mentioned Evgeni Malkin and his final year. That's your read on the situation, Jason? Because I know there's some conflicting reporting out there about what happens with him. You don't imagine any other future where this is anything other than his last year here and in the NHL?
I didn't understand why this was a story, Adam. I mean, this is an assumption that has been made around the Penguins for a long time. Nobody expects Gino to be back. And that's fine. Like, he's getting older. His game's trailing off. His contract's up after this year. A lot of times Russian-born players go back and play in their home country in the KHL for a couple of years. I had always understood that that's something Gino would entertain. The Penguins are in the middle of a rebuild. Do they have to make this decision, or do they want to allocate cap space a different way? I've never operated with the assumption that Gino was going to be a part of things in 26, 27. Maybe if they were good. My take on it, and I've written this, I don't understand why there's not more sort of afforded to this or attention paid to this. Think about a player of Evgeni Malkin's stature. If he was playing for another team, the Minnesota Wild or something, I'm just randomly naming one, and this was the end of his career, would you tell me that team would not be doing everything possible to win with that guy under contract? And that's why I don't understand why that's not manifesting in a little bit greater sense of urgency. I'm not saying Kyle Dubas needs to sell the farm or do anything crazy. He doesn't. But you have 30 picks in the next 3 drafts. You can get out from under Tristan Jarry and Erik Karlsson. The cap's going up. Like, you can come up with about $40 million to spend differently on July 1. Why they're not doing that, and why they're kicking the can in the last year of Gino, Letang, and Crosby together with all we've heard about these guys, man, I don't get it. I don't get it.
You don't think there's any way that if they're like decent and look like they're moving in the right direction, that, if the Penguins say, hey, we're going to keep you around for $4 million for a couple of years, and he's no longer that big chunk of the cap that he's been for so much of his career, but instead is more of a, kind of an ordinary second, third line center type of money, you can't imagine that being something he'd be interested in?
Oh, no, I think there's a possibility, like, in that scenario, Adam, sure. I don't see that scenario ever unfolding. You're saying, like, at that point, Gino needs to be healthy and productive. He needs to have line mates. It was a revolving door last year. And the Penguins need to be good enough to where that's a worthwhile investment. I don't see the Venn diagram where that exists. Like, I love Evgeni Malkin. He's a huge part of things here, but the Penguins would be best served to spend that money on a younger player that they can have for a bunch of years. Like, I get that. It just, I wouldn't do that right now. Like, I would, this is the last year of Gino. I would honor that. Other franchises would honor that if that's the player who's playing his final year. It would take a lot for me to extend him.
Yeah, I can certainly see that side of the coin as well. I just think it's interesting to talk through. Jason, last thing on the Penguins, some reports bubbling up that Mario Lemieux and Ron Burkle would like to buy the team back from FSG. They say they're not interested in selling a majority stake. The Forbes valuation as we sit here today on the franchise overall is $1.75 billion. Are we ever going to see this play out in public, or is this mostly public posturing and we're not going to know the outcome until it happens?
Yeah, probably won't know the outcome until it happens. I shouldn't say I question. This isn't a sure thing. Them considering it is much different than them making an offer and them being Mario and Ron. I do think it's being legitimately considered. I think there's interest there, but I think there's a tough bridge to financially traverse, if that makes any sense. Like, here's
it probably sells for $2 billion, right? Because these always go over whatever the valuation is.
It was $900 million last time. That would be more than double franchise value in a time where the asset is basically depreciated. And I'm not a financial guy, but the Penguins have stunk recently. I don't see how they double in value. But I will say that, the economy has changed and whatever in a couple years, at least as far as professional teams and what they're selling for. And like Burkle and Mario are going to take a financial bath on this if they do buy them back. Do they want to do that? What would FSG's price be? I know FSG is telling people that, they're not looking for a majority owner or whatever. They're kind of doing damage control. I'm sorry, man. They're a corporate entity. They're a business. Everybody's got a number. Everybody's got a price. Did you watch wrestling in the 90s? $1 Million Man?
No, I'm not a wrestling guy.
Come on. That was a famous famous line. Everybody's got a price, and it's true. Like Mario Lemieux and Ron Burkle, I guarantee you, could pay a certain dollar figure for the Penguins and take it to FSG, and FSG would say yes. I just don't know if Mario and Ron Burkle want to do that, because I don't know if it would make sense for them. So, I mean, it's a fantastic thing to think about as Penguins fans. I think ownership would be in a much better spot. I think FSG kind of feels plastic, and they haven't connected with the community the same way the old regime did. And it would be a good thing for the Penguins if Mario and Burkle took over. I don't think it's as easy as 1, 2, 3 because of what they sold for and what it would cost to buy it back.
Yeah, just for context, Ron Burkle's net worth is estimated by Forbes at $3.4 billion. So if you're talking about 1.75, that's half of his net worth. Obviously you're going to throw Mario in there, but I think there would have to be some minority investors to get that type of deal done as well. Jason, we're going to get into the Pirates here on the other side. If you are on audio, stay right here. It's all going to be one file. If you're on video, head over to our Post-Gazette Pirates YouTube channel for that part of the conversation. Excited to dig into that. We'll be right back.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.